brothers, and they were jealous of you because you were the special child. What feeling, what emotion might this bring to you if you were thrown into a pit?
Hate. He's angry.
Fear.
Loneliness.
Betrayal.
Betrayal. I like that. Good. All good answers. Let's take it one step further. Your brothers lift you out of the pit. You get sold to some Ishmaelites who are going to the slave block. And you are sold as a slave. And you are now in this big house that belongs to the captain of the guard. And you are a slave in this house. How might you feel going from the pit to being a slave? Any other emotions? From the pit to being a slave.
Grateful.
Okay.
Tired.
Maybe a little humiliated that. Looking on the bright side there. So now you're a slave. In charge, you do well as a slave. And you're in charge maybe of 11 or 12 other slaves. And while you are doing the master's work in the house, God is blessing you. The master, the captain of the guard, sees that God is with you. And you're prospering, you're successful in everything you do. Everything you touch, God's fingerprints and hands seem to be on it. But while you're in this house of slaves, you are falsely accused by a seductive woman who is the wife of the captain of the guard. How do you feel now that you are falsely accused? Anything to add to our list?
Abused. Scared.
What?
Scared.
Scared? Revenge? And you remember the story last week. After being falsely accused by this wicked woman who said, "Look, I have his cloak," she told her husband. "This is Joseph's cloak," when in actuality, Joseph was just trying to get away from her and get out of her presence, and she grabbed his cloak as evidence that, "Look, he tried to rape me. He tried to rape me." And when she tells this to the captain of the guard, the chief executioner, he's accused, and now he's thrown into prison. We've gone from the pit to being a slave, in Potiphar's house to being falsely accused, and now he is in prison under the authority of the prison warden. This story in the Bible reminds me of Tim Robbins in Shawshank Redemption. You ever see that movie?
I love that movie.
It's a good movie. Not exactly the cleanest language in the world, but it's a good movie. But Tim Robbins becomes an excellent prisoner and works his way all the way up to being the assistant to the warden. Anything different when you're in prison than what we've already mentioned that you can think of? Or is this pretty good? Covers pretty much all of it? Now here's what I want you to take from our story today. Joseph had a whole bunch of things in his past that he could have dwelt on to keep him from being positive in the moment and having hope and gratitude and being excited about where he was going. There's a whole bunch of things he could have camped on. Well, I was falsely accused. He could live in that. Well, I was betrayed by my brothers. He could live there. My situation is hopeless. I'm humiliated. I'm a slave. I'm going to get revenge. There's so many negative things that he could have focused on if he wanted to. But nowhere in the Joseph narrative do we find him focusing on any of these things, which is kind of amazing to me.
So maybe grateful.
Grateful. But nowhere do we see this. And if I were Joseph, I probably would have found one or two of these to focus on. And I don't know if maybe you found one or two or three or more of these to focus on in your past that could prevent you from all the blessings God wants to do in your life today and wants to bless you with going forward. So if you have your Bibles, would you please turn with me to Genesis chapter 39, verses 20 through 23. Genesis 39, 20 through 23. I want to start off this morning with this principle. Whatever the situation, we can be blessed, empowered, and responsible in that situation. This is how it was with Joseph. It didn't seem to matter what you did to him. He just turned lemons into lemonade. Didn't matter what kind of situation you put him in. He just was of the mindset, I'm going to turn this situation into a God-glorifying opportunity here. I mean, you can knock him down, but he's not going to stay down. His attitude, his openness to God, his willingness to let God be God in his life was so powerful that no situation could hold him down. No poor circumstance could ruin him. Because of God working in his life and what God meant to him, it just seems like whatever the situation, Joseph was blessed, empowered, and responsible, and he didn't live here. Instead, he lived in a higher way, on a different order. He lived in a more godly way. So let's read this passage here. Chris?
Joseph's mother took him out and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But while Joseph was in the prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did.
Now, when you read this should be bringing up thoughts in your mind that says, wait a second, aren't those pretty similar to the words I just heard about Joseph when he became a slave? Because it's almost similar, and it's a little confusing because we feel like we're reading the same thing, that Joseph was treated one way, but yet he responded in a similar way. So let's do this. Go back to verses 2 through 6 of the same chapter, Genesis 39, and let's compare what happened to Joseph when he became a slave in Potiphar's house. Let's compare that to what happened to Joseph when he was thrown in prison. Gino, do you want to read chapter 39, verses 2 through 6?
The Lord was with Joseph so that he became a prosperous man. He was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper. Joseph found favor in his sight and served him. So he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put under his charge. From the time that he had made him overseer of his house, and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house on account of Joseph. So the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and he had no concerns regarding anything except the food he ate.
So here we have two situations. In both situations, God's hand is on Joseph the same, and Joseph turns a situation into an opportunity. Because our problems become God's opportunity.
Yes, amen.
Our weakness becomes God's opportunity for His strength in our lives. Our loneliness becomes God's opportunity for His personal touch in our lives. And there's something about being in the pit where the only thing we can do is look up that puts us in kind of a good place. When everything else in life kind of falls apart or the rug's pulled out from underneath us, and all we really have is God, and we can't really depend on other people, and sometimes we can't trust other people for one reason or another, then we find there is one who is truly trustworthy. And I found in the New Testament that although we're supposed to love each other and encourage each other and inspire and pray for each other, there's not really any verses that talk about trusting each other. You ever think about that? There's many verses that talk about put your trust in the Lord.
Yes, amen.
Trust in God in all your ways, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. and He will direct your paths and lead your paths. Is trust a big piece in relationships?
Yes.
It is a big piece, but it's interesting that the Bible really calls us to trust in Him and really doesn't command us, so to speak, to trust in each other. We should love each other. We should hope in each other. We should encourage each other. But when it comes to trust, we have to remember that God is the one person, because we are humans, we're going to fail each other. We're going to miss a birthday from time to time. We're going to miss an appointment, even though we don't want to. It's going to happen. We are human beings. Something may come out of our mouths that we probably wish we could take back, because we are human beings. But God can be trusted. But when we look at Joseph's life, again, the situation, we find that the captain of the guard looked at his life and said, man, God's with this guy because his attitude is so good. He was responsible. The warden, while he was in prison, he didn't have to worry about anything under Joseph's care. He trusted Joseph because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. And that's what I want to reiterate from last week. The best prayer I could ever pray for you is that God is with you.
Yes.
Because when God is with you, the Lord was with Joseph, that's what gives us power over temptation. When God is with us, that's what gives us an attitude that draw other people to God when they see that in us. It's God being with us that gives us the ability to forgive other people when we can't forgive on our own. It's God being with us that inspires us to call a school to see if there's availability when we weren't even thinking about it. It wasn't even on the radar. It's God that gives us strength to go through our physical battles and to trust Him to be our healer. And this is what Joseph did. And again, he could have lived in any one of these places, but he didn't. Instead, he was able to rise above his circumstance. And he did it because of this one verse that I think was constantly in his mind. Chapter 50, if you want to turn there, look at Genesis chapter 50. And I want you to look at verse 19. Because all of these stories we're reading about his life are going to dovetail into this one verse. Chapter 50, verse 19. Wes, when you have that, read it for me.
Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for I am in the place of God.
For am I in the place of God? Keep
For
reading.
am I in the place of God.
Keep reading the next verse.
But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant
Thank you.
it for good in order to bring it all about as it is this day to save many people alive.
That's good. So later on, when Joseph is talking about his brothers, talking to his brothers, he says this, what you intended to do to harm me, God intended it for good.
Amen.
And he allowed that to happen because he knew that it was going to save many lives. And Joseph lived with that goal in mind. And here's the good news for us. It doesn't matter if you're falsely accused. It doesn't matter if you're betrayed or all of these things. Just know this. God is going to take what other people intend to harm you, and He's going to turn it into something good. And if you can persevere and rise above it and be strong and trust Him, you're going to be a tool that God can use going forward. What some intended to do to harm me, Joseph said, God intended it for good. And he could see the big picture. Joseph could see down the road. And if you look at your situation, you have to believe that no matter what's happening to you now, God is going to use that for good if you'll let Him teach you from it. If you'll let your mistakes be motivators to be better and do better. If you'll let your situation cause you to turn even closer to God, that's going to become a testimony for other people. Sorry for the spit there, Keith. That's going to become a testimony for other people. When you're getting over the flu, it's hard to monitor the spit level as it comes out. We can be blessed, empowered, and responsible. What do I like to camp on? I like to ruminate. I heard this week, there's a difference in reflecting and ruminating. Ruminating is where you play the old tape over and over again, with no real idea of bringing it to a positive response, but you get a shot of dopamine every time you replay that old tape where you were victimized or you were accused or you were betrayed. Every time you think about it, replay the steps, it just, woo, dopamine comes in. Reflection is when you look back at something only for the purpose of asking the question, how can I take what happened to me and create a positive response out of it? Where I get a plan to get over it. Where I'm motivated to do something better. That's reflection. Ruminating is disastrously harmful to our lives and will take us into depression really quick. Don't ruminate, reflect. Reflect says, I think about it only for the purpose of creating a plan for how to resolve the issue or how to get better so that I don't keep ruminating about it in the future. All right, that's enough on that. Joseph was not afraid to speak the truth. I got to hurry a little bit here, but there were these two characters, if you want to read the story. There was a cupbearer and there was a baker. And these both served the king. The cupbearer is the person who would hand the wine to the king. And the baker, of course, was the one who would bake the food. But the cupbearer would taste the drink and make sure it wasn't poisonous, so that if anybody was going to die, it would be the cupbearer and not the king. And the baker would bake the food, and these were two huge high positions. In many ways, these two individuals were closer to the king than anybody else, the cupbearer and the baker. Well, they ticked off the king, the Pharaoh, and they were thrown in prison, in the exact same prison where Joseph was. And that's what takes us into this story. Debbie, will you read that for us?
Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt ended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own.
Now, we probably need to read this. Well, we probably don't have time. But the cupbearer and the baker, here they are, they have these dreams. Now remember, Joseph, they called him the dreamer, because he had dreams of what God was going to do in his life and how he was going to lead. And now these two people have dreams. And Joseph, instead of just being in self-pity, he actually saw these two cats in prison. And he said to them, man, why are you guys looking so down? Now, how could Joseph even think about anybody but himself after everything that had happened to him? I mean, what kind of character is it where you've been beaten down, humiliated, betrayed, and all this stuff, but yet you can look up enough in life to actually care about somebody else when you've been hurt so badly yourself and situations in your life are so poor? How in the world did Joseph even have enough within him to look at this cupbearer and the baker and say, hey man, you guys look really dejected. What's going on? And then they told him. They said, well, we had these dreams and we don't know how to interpret them. And I could just see Joseph thinking, well, you came to the right place. Then Joseph says, well, dreams are for God alone to interpret, but I'm going to go ahead and help you anyway. Even though it's God's job, Joseph says, let me help you. And then he interpreted these dreams, and he wasn't afraid to speak the truth to these men. Because do you know how this story turns out? One of the dreams, Joseph said to the cupbearer, hey, you're okay. You're going to be restored, and you're going to be still serving the king. But to the baker, he said, you got 3 days, pal. And then your life's over. You're going to get impaled. Impaled. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand, but he impaled the chief baker just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. And I wanted this little piece in there because I'm amazed at Joseph being willing to speak truth to people, because I'm not sure if I knew Mario was going to be entering heaven tomorrow, that I would want to be the one to actually tell him, Mario, let's enjoy ourselves today, because tomorrow you have a new address. But Joseph, they asked him, hey, what do these dreams mean? And Joseph told them, 3 days, you're going to be restored. In 3 days, sorry, Baker, life is over for you. And that is exactly what happened. But there's this one interesting piece we're going to close with today. Joseph tells the cupbearer, he says, hey, when everything turns out okay with you, because it's going to be okay, I'm interpreting your dream, would you do me a favor? I want you to tell Pharaoh this. God being with us allows us to be real and honest with our desires. And this is so important. Let's read what Joseph tells the cupbearer after he tells him what's going to happen to him. Beth, can you read that for us?
But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in prison.
Okay, stop right there. So follow me on this story. So here's Joseph, and he's telling the cupbearer, hey, you're going to be restored. You're going to still be serving Pharaoh the wine, and you're still going to be taste tester for him. That's going to happen. But do me a favor, Joseph says. And then we get a little picture of Joseph's humanity. And I like this, because I hate it when people act more spiritual than they are. And I hate it when I act more spiritual than I actually am. There's something endearing when a person is honest and is humble enough to maybe admit, you know what? I'm not as spiritual as I probably should be in this area. This is what he tells the cupbearer. He says, hey, when everything goes well with you and you're restored, remember me, show me kindness, mention me to the Pharaoh, and get me out of this dang prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews when he was sold as a slave. And even here, I've done nothing to deserve to be put into prison. So he wasn't living here, but he was sure human enough to say, hey, put a good word in for me. When everything goes good for you, tell the Pharaoh that I've been wronged here and get me out of this place. And I think it's such a good kernel of truth for us, because even in our desire to walk with God, there is always a place to be real and honest with our desires and to bring those forth to the Lord. There were many times as a single man where I prayed and said, God, I would be better off to humanity if I were married. Bring me a wife. And then I didn't hear anything until finally he said, okay, here's one. Why don't you go for her? I brought you one. Are you gonna let this slip by, or are you gonna actually take a step yourself? And I'm glad I made that decision, because I wasn't a very good dater. I don't know if I'm a good husband, but I think I'm a better husband than I was a dater. At least I hope I am. That's my prayer. Now look at this. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. So yes, the Pharaoh restored the relationship with the cupbearer, but the cupbearer didn't say a word on Joseph's behalf. And here we go again. You know, now he's forgotten. So we go from the pit, getting taken out, to being a slave. And now we go, while he's a slave in the house, he gets falsely accused. He goes to prison. He does well in prison. He asks to be remembered, and he's not remembered. And so here he is, and he's going to stay in prison 2 more years. But you know what? It does not stop him from putting God first, having a good attitude, making the best out of the situation, because God is with him. And whatever your situation is today, I want to encourage you, take your honesty, your true desires, your heartfelt thoughts, and give them to God. And even if they're not very spiritual, I'd rather be honest than I would be act like I'm something I'm not. I'd rather be that way. Because God can handle even our humanity if we'll give it to him. And say, God, I'm struggling here right now. Or I'm having a tough time with this. Or Lord, I can't forgive this person. I need your help to help me forgive. Or Lord, I'm lonely right now. I need your touch. I need you to bring a friend into my life that I could be a friend to and friend with. Lord, I need a job. I need to pay my bills and I want to work, whatever it is. And Don right here is one of my friends from Toastmasters, and a year ago he lost his wife. And it hasn't been easy for you, has it, Don? But He gave a speech last week. The first time he's given a speech in Toastmasters is a 4 to 6 minute speech, and he got so blessed he went 10 minutes. Don, welcome to the Going Over Time Club. Mario's in that club. I don't know if Lee's in that club.
Your name came up.
But I know, Don, that it hasn't been, you could live here in one of these if you wanted to. Yeah. But you can also live in the beauty of God's strength too, and the beauty of God's hope, and in the beauty of God's empowerment. And whatever's facing us today, be real with your desires, but just know that the whole key to it all is letting God be with you. God was with Joseph. That's the difference maker, no matter what situation that we're in. God is with Don Colton. God is with Bill and Beth through his father's illness right now. God is with Jean right now. God is with Nadara and her knee surgery and what's going on with their new little family friend that they have, their furry family friend. God is with you. Let him be with you. He would be really pleased today, I think, if you just said, God, here I am today. Here I am. My humanity, my spirituality, my thoughts, just fill me up. Meet me right where I am. That's what he wants to do. So you have in front of you a wafer and a communion cup, and would you just pray with me? Lord, thank you again for Joseph's life.